Welcome to the Awakening Together channel here on YouTube. This is our Awakening Together weekly gathering. Each and every week we have a different minister who speaks. If you'd like to attend our services live, please visit our website awakening-together.org. Click on Online Sanctuary on the main menu. Then, How to Enter the Sanctuary. Our services are held Sundays at 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time. We'd love to see you in the sanctuary.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday. Welcome to our weekly gathering. As I say, every time I do this, seems like anymore. It's like, wow, it's been forever since I've done this. So anyway, it's been forever since I've done this. But it's fun to be back to do this. And first, let's take a moment for prayer. If you'll join me, please. And as I seemingly look inward, all I see, all I feel is gratitude. Just my heart bursts with gratitude for the opportunity to share the wisdom of the heart, for the opportunity to participate in that wisdom, to embody that wisdom, to express that wisdom, and to join with each and every one of you in such a deep way that we're clear that I don't end at the end of my fingertips and you don't start at the beginning of yours, but we are all clearly one presence, one being, the one true self. And even as I say that, I just feel the gratitude for the truth of that. And I invite you to join me in that gratitude. Thank you, Father. Amen. Whew, I am lit up. How about y'all? All right, let's see. We're going to do something else now. We're going to... Rhoda's going to read for us, and Rhoda will be reading from Liz Cronkite's book, memoir. Rhoda, you got the name of that book in front of you? Okay, Rhoda's going to tell you what she's reading. Thank you, Rhoda.
No problem. I am reading from a memoir of Christ, A Student of A Course in Miracles Awakens. And if you have the book and you care to read along, I am on page 372, and I am reading the chapter called Ontology of A Course in Miracles. If, like me, you hear the word ontology and you go, what's that? Let me just read the definition for you very quickly. Ontology: a set of concepts and categories in a subject area or domain that shows their properties and the relations between them. And you will see when I read this why knowing the definition is just really, really helpful here. So, Ontology of A Course in Miracles. One day, I hit a wall in my study of A Course in Miracles. The Course's aim is what it calls the atonement, or correction of the perception that you are separate from God. Yet, if God is all and perfect, as it assures us God is, how could God have an imperfect thought that needed correcting? I could not go forward until I had the answer and Spirit, and told this to Spirit. The first thing Spirit said to me was that I was taking it too seriously. Familiar with that? This too is said in the Course, and I got it. Yes, I was, and I could feel that. Yet, that was not enough. I had to have an answer. What follows is what was given to me that day and the elaboration that came over the years. I did not remember when the initial explanation occurred, only that it was referred to as, quote, long ago by Spirit in my first dialogues in August of 2005. In time, I came to see that everything in this ontology or theory of experience can be found in the Course, just not in one place. Often Spirit gave me answers that suited my understanding at the time. Some ideas were modified or fell away as I advanced. However, this ontology only stood up to every question that followed me or students who came to me. But spiritual insights only continued to illuminate it, up to and into writing this memoir. Here, I share it and what it means about you. So this part is the ontology itself. She starts by saying, God, being all, must contain the idea of its own opposite. But being all, God cannot have an opposite. So as soon as the idea of not God arises in God's mind, it's undone by God's all-encompassing nature. It's only ever an impossible idea. As God is formless, timeless, one, only, whole, the same throughout, and infinite, the idea of not God is time-bound, diverse, imperfect, limited form. So within the idea of not God, but not in God, time makes it seem like the idea of not God arose long ago and will be undone in some indefinite future. Time is that instant of the idea of not God / the undoing of the idea of not God, unfolding as a story. Time is the illusion of not God on which all other illusions of not God rests. As God is, the idea of not God just is, or would be if it could be at all. So not God is not intentional. It has no purpose. It is not a sin, nor is it a mistake. As an impossible idea over as soon as it was thought, it's a false experience. It is an illusion. The place in God's mind where this idea seems to have occurred and been undone is called the Son of God in A Course in Miracles. The Son of God is always part of God. So it is split between God and the idea of not God. The part of the Son of God that never left God is called Christ. The idea of not God in the Son of God's mind is called perception, consciousness, or awareness. The Son of God projects an appearance of a universe of form as the material of consciousness. In this pseudo-reality, the Son of God projects itself as billions of sons of God, each a mind seemingly split between an awareness of God and not God. The material universe is neutral, has no meaning in itself. This includes persons, which is bodies and personalities. The conflicts that play out in the material universe reflect the conflicts in the mind, which are seemingly individual consciousnesses of the sons of God. As time is the expression of that moment of the idea of not God / the undoing of the idea of not God, what began as an impossible expression of fear was instantly transformed into an expression of love. So from the start, time has belonged to spirit, Christ's extension in consciousness, and been an expression of the atonement. Because the moment was over as soon as it occurred, the atonement is complete. And the outcome of time as the completed expression of the undoing of the idea of not God is inevitable. Therefore, time does not bring the atonement about. Rather, it expresses the already complete atonement. So every moment in time, no matter how it looks, manifests the atonement's completion. It has never been necessary to take time, and all that happens in it, seriously, as only one mind seems to project not God. Only one mind seems to be corrected in the atonement. Each seemingly individual mind, as part of that one mind, manifests that correction, no matter how they appear or their level of awareness of God. So everyone, every moment, is playing their part in the atonement perfectly. This does not mean that every mind will awaken and manifest an awareness of God. It means all awaken simultaneously as each perfectly fulfills their part. Just as each piece in a jigsaw puzzle of a castle is necessary to make the picture whole, even if it is not a piece of the castle. The atonement occurs in minds, so you find it in spirit within you through spirit's vision and seeing in other minds. The atonement is any moment of awareness of truth and is perfect in that moment. It is not a progression, although its effects can be seen in the material unfolding through time, both in individual minds and all minds collectively. As the final expression of what occurs in minds, what unfolds in the material world is the least significant aspect of consciousness. It is only meaningless effect. It has no consequence of its own. So, you will not find the atonement in the arc of human history, although you can see the effect of the awareness of God on minds in the arc of human history. Because it takes time for correction to show up, the material world will disappear from the Son of God's mind before the atonement fully manifests in the material world. The Course points out that there has been no significant awakening yet, but the atonement can be completed in any single mind or in every mind at any moment. As with everything else in time, the time for atonement's completion is predetermined as it is already over. So, what does this mean about you? In Christ, in your mind, you are one with God. Your experience as a person in a world apart from God is an illusion. Your mind and your life in the world are an expression of the atonement. They do not bring it about. I feel to read that again. Your mind and your life in the world are an expression of the atonement. They do not bring it about. So any sense of purpose you may have is your sense of the part you play in the expression of the atonement. As the atonement is complete and simply unfolds as the story of time, everything that happens in your mind and material life is predetermined. While your experience as a person is false, it is not wrong. Neither is your experience of ego, which is your identification with the person, with all its attendant fears and willfulness. Whatever is in your mind and plays out in your material life, in every moment it expresses the atonement. To whatever degree you are aware of God as reality, it is the atonement being expressed through you. It is your part in the expression of the atonement. You cannot step wrong. You cannot deviate from a predetermined path. Every thought, feeling, and action you take is part of the atonement. Live as you have always done, as your mind and material life has always been part of the atonement. Your thoughts, feelings, will, desires, motivations, and actions, while sometimes ego, have always manifested the atonement. If it is your part to play, you may sort out with spirit when these are attuned to how things will unfold, and when they are ego pulling in its own direction away from the whole unfolding. Ego cannot prevent the atonement, and at no time is it an obstacle to the atonement, although it likes to think it is. In fact, ego, also known as not God, is the manifest reason for the atonement, in the atonement. Whether you put ego aside, and the timing, if you do, is the atonement. Some minds manifest the atonement overtly in that their seemingly individuality, they are aware of God to some degree. This may be anything from a vague sense of God that they do not pursue, all the way to their full manifesting Christ consciousness. But even those who have no awareness of God are a part of the atonement, as no mind can be apart from it. They simply represent the idea of not God yet to be brought to correction. Think of it this way. You're watching a movie and it's called The Atonement. If you do not know that it has a happy ending, you worry for the protagonist over every painful scene. But if you know that it has a happy ending, you understand that the protagonist's pain is only temporary, and you relax and you watch with curiosity to see how the happy ending comes about. You may not find this comforting, as the one Son of God is the protagonist in this movie called The Atonement, and your seemingly individual life represents the Son of God's mind in the middle of the story, not the end. The atonement does not guarantee that each Son of God gets a happy life, but it is not an accident that you're reading this. It is the expression of the atonement. If you did not before, you now manifest the atonement in your awareness of it. And you have comfort and guidance and spirit within you. To what degree you are aware of this comfort is the atonement manifesting through your mind. Thank you.
Stop here. Or maybe read it again and then stop. I can tell you when I read this, and I read this after, Liz was the guest for our Sat song. I don't know, again, time, last week or the week before. Regina interviewed Liz, and I read this. I read this ontology subsequent to that interview, and it struck something in me that I can't describe. I just can't describe. Yeah, and given it's beyond words, okay, I'm done. No, really. Just I have sat with this, and I've sat with inner wisdom, Holy Spirit with this, and just the understanding of this hit me all at once, and then I go back and I try and deconstruct that understanding. So it was visceral, a felt sense of the understanding of this. But I will attempt to share with you my deconstruction of that understanding. I loved how Liz says the atonement is merely a correction of the impossible thought of not God. It's a beautiful description of the atonement. And she goes on to say that we're living in that space between the impossible thought and the, oh, that's impossible, right? And I think it's so interesting how A Course in Miracles says, the tiny mad idea, which we forgot to laugh, right? But, we did. We laughed immediately. But that it also describes the tiny mad idea and the correction, the atonement of that tiny mad idea is occurring simultaneously. And yet, as it's described here, the experience that we're having is in that that impossible moment that never happened, is strung out into what we call time. So it seems like we had the tiny mad idea of not God a long time ago, and that we're in the middle of this story, and we're moving towards the end of the story, which is the laugh, right? Oh yeah, that's right, that's impossible. So that's the span in which we live. That's what we call time. And again, because God is everything, it's impossible that there could be not God. Because it's impossible that there could be not God, this time, this span that we're living in, is in actuality impossible. Nonetheless, that's the experience we're in. We're in the middle of that story. I titled this homily, Accepting Your Expression of the Atonement. And it was this piece that struck me most deeply. It became really, really clear that, as Liz said here, your mind and your life in the world are an expression of the atonement. So it became really clear to me that all I am ever doing is expressing. I'm not trying to get anywhere. I'm not trying to become anything. What I'm doing is I am watching the atonement unfold. The life that I'm coming to realize that the life that I live is an expression of the unfolding of the correction to the belief in not God. Given the inevitability of this correction, it's clear that there can be it's clear to me that there can be no individual will separate and apart from the one will. If what's going on here is the move towards oneness, wholeness, correction, healing. Again, that's the only thing going on here. So to believe that I could have a separate will from that is just an illusion within an illusion. There's only one thing going on here. And my life, my thoughts, my feelings, all of that is an experience of that one will, of that one move towards correction. Liz says somewhere in here, I think she says, you may not find this very comforting. But let me tell you, I do. I really do. And again, that's what struck me so much was, so what's the not God? The belief, the not God belief is that I could be separate from God, that anything could be separate from God, right? And what came to me in this reading was, of course, the absurdity of that, the absurdity that anything could be separate from everything that is. I mean, right? It's not like oneness and then there's something separate. It's everything there is. There can be nothing separate from that, including this little thing that I like to call Jacquelyn. And this everything that is seems to be, in this impossible moment, coming to the recognition that it's the everything that is, and that nothing exists outside of the everything that is. I know that sounds convoluted, but that's the way it's coming out. So let's talk about the individual within that ontology. It's funny because as I looked at this, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes that idea make sense. Oh yeah, that I've heard that. You know, the masters have said this. The master, for me, it really pulled it all together. And one of the things that that came immediately was, oh yeah, the individual will never awaken. And so, talking about, you may or may not find comfort in that. I do find comfort in that. If the individual will never awaken, there's no need for me to attempt to measure the progress of the individual in the awakening. You know, how am I doing? Wait, who's the I? What do you mean, how am I doing? I am playing perfectly my part in the awakening of the one mind. I'm playing perfectly my part in the expression of the atonement. I'm expressing perfectly the atonement as it unfolded. So the task is not for me to awaken. That would be impossible, right? The task is to appreciate my expression of the atonement. The task is to, as spirit, appreciate that expression from this vantage point in the atonement. So I don't have a job to bring the atonement about. That's already occurred. If you're more comfortable, you might say the end is certain, right? The success of the atonement is certain. So, you know, what this seeming little individual character has to do is not to bring the atonement about. The atonement, the oneness, God, frankly, doesn't need my help. So what is there for me to do? It's for me to appreciate the expression of the atonement through me. It's for me to understand my relationship to the awakening of the one mind. I wanted to, I would tell you, let me try and start another sentence. As I sat with this thought, I sat down and I wrote with inner wisdom. I'm not going to read that outright to you. I will ask that Sina post what inner wisdom had to say to me about this when she posts the homily. But I do want to refer to it because it helps me get a grasp of what's going on here. I will again read you some excerpts on this idea that the individual will never awaken, and then that we couldn't possibly measure the progress of the individual towards awakening. What we're doing is, as spirit, we learn to appreciate the seeming individual expression of the awakening or atonement as it is expressed through the body, mind, personality with which we most closely identify as ourself. Wordy, right? Sorry. Again, what could the individual possibly awaken to? The individual can't awaken because all it could possibly awaken to is its awareness of its own non-existence, right? If the mistake is believing the mistake, which seems like a strong word even at this point, but if the mistake is believing in separate, distinct individual parts, the correction to that mistake would have to be the understanding that there are no separate individual parts. So what could the individual awaken to? The only thing that the individual could ever awaken to is the awareness that it doesn't exist. It's amazing, right? I mean, doesn't that take off the pressure? Woo, okay, I'm done here, right? I mean, it takes the pressure of, enlightening or bringing the whole world to enlightenment, or, right? It takes, all of that's gone. I truly can't mess this up. You know, in times past, I've heard that, and I'm like, oh, okay, because, you know, there's a GPS, you know, the Holy Spirit's a GPS, and it's going to put me back on track. Listen, the awakening is occurring. It doesn't need my help. What is my task in this awakening? My task in this awakening is to understand my relationship to the whole. What is my relationship to the whole? I am the whole. I am the only, the all, the correction. You know, as much as we have talked about, yeah, I know the individual can't awaken, it's still, for me, this experience has still been an attempt to perfect this particular piece of consciousness. I'm going to be the best one I can be. That's not it. It's not helpful. That leads me to, oh man, I fussed at that person. I really suck. I'm never going to awaken. Right? I mean, it's just that whole idea that there's something that has to be done by me in order for the universe to come to its full expression. I mean, it's absurd if you say it out loud like that. So what is there to do? Let's acknowledge, as have the masters, that all suffering is brought about by my belief that I am an individual, my belief, my identification with this individual character that I have taken myself to be. And boy, have we talked about this. We've talked about withdrawing the identification from the individual. And we talk about placing it with the true self. What we're doing is again, we're like, I don't need to move this individual through time or through these exercises or through space or, you know, to get somewhere. I need to actually don't need to do anything, but if all suffering is brought about by the belief that I'm an individual and I don't actually have any effect on the way this thing is going, what is left for me to do? What's left for me to do is to sorry, mine really wants to get in on this. Is to decide how I will experience this inevitable unfolding of the atonement. How do I want to experience that? I'm not going to bring it about. I'm not going to bring it about. It was a thought that was here and gone. So the only question is, how will I experience that event, that seeming event that was already here and gone? So again, that's a change in perspective from the individual trying to get somewhere. To an appreciation of the unfolding, from the perspective of the unfolding, from the perspective of the correction having already occurred. I don't need to try and change anything. Have we heard that before? Right? I'm not trying to change anything. I'm not trying to get anywhere. I'm not trying to make anything better. I'm going to sit back and enjoy the ride. Well, and how do I do that? Well, guess what? That's the loving all method, right? What if we were to identify with the unfolding, the flow of the universe from the perspective of the flow of the universe? What if it doesn't need me to do anything to bring about the correction that is already occurring? Then I get to decide where to stand, if you will, in that correction. From that vantage point, I can clearly see that there's nothing to gain. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing that needs to be done by me. The question is, what will my experience of that be? The atonement doesn't need, the correction doesn't need my help, my little Jacquelyn help, to be complete. The only question is, where will I stand as I view this undoing? As I say this, I get this vision of, first of all, this little thing going like this at the universe, right? I also get a vision of like this thing tumbling among the currents of a stream, right? Head over feet, tumbling, right? That's how many of us have chosen to experience this, right? It's the attempt to fight that tide instead of picking up our feet and just floating along with it, right? There's nothing that I need to do. My attempt to push it around will result in me tumbling along or getting beat up by the rocks. The invitation is to find my expression of the flow as it unfolds. Again, to pick up my feet and let the stream carry me along. There's nothing that I need to. The belief that I need to do something to bring the atonement about is the tumbling in the stream, right? Uh, uh, there's no individual here who needs to do anything to bring that flow about. That is the flow. The invitation is to appreciate the unfolding for what it is. So, the suffering that we experience is the belief that there is an individual will, an individual will apart from this unfolding. The belief that I could want something, the belief that I need to do something, the belief in an individual existence apart from the flow of what is. That's the suffering. So, what the heck am I doing here, right? Why am I even talking to you this morning? It's really to, what's helpful is to root out and withdraw belief from those thoughts that say that I could possibly head off in a different direction than the flow of life, than the flow of what is. Funny, I just came in my head. I need do nothing. Where it says that in the Course, I can't tell you. It says it somewhere, but that's the truth of it. Course talks about the tiny mad idea in the mind of God, and it's clear. And I don't know how it says it, but it's clear. It was like tiny mad idea. Oops, never mind. That couldn't be true. The question for me is how I experience that. How I float on that wave of what is. Listen, there's nothing that this little piece of existence needs to do to bring this about. That's a done deal. The question is, how will I experience that? Kicking and screaming? Or am I going to pick my feet up and float along? My phone's talking to me. I don't know why. Stop it. It says, or am I going to...
didn't understand that.
She didn't understand. I hope y'all did. She didn't understand picking her feet up and floating along. That's really funny. Too funny. But that's really the question. How do we do that? What thoughts? What practices? How do we torment ourselves? Because that's all that we're doing. Because look, y'all, this thing is unfolding. Where are you going to be in that unfolding? How are you going to experience the unfolding of what is? That's the only question. You're not going to help it along. You're not going to stem the tide. Where do you want to be in that unfolding? How do you want to experience that unfolding? Okay. Yeah. Talk about tiny mad ideas. It seems like I've said this in a homily before, but I just got a picture of when we were growing up. There was a cartoon. I think we even had it on. I think I even had it on a sweatshirt. It was this big eagle swooping in to pick up this mouse, and the mouse is going like this, right? So funny that popped into my mind. I think the point is what's occurring is occurring. My choice is how I will experience that. Will I be a part of the flow? Will I recognize that I am a part of the flow? Or will I continue to insist that that I'm an individual and that I've got these things to do, and this proves that the truth isn't true, that things won't unfold to show me that I am one with the universe. Or will I insist that the universe needs my help to unfold? Right? Those are the denials of truth. Those are the denials of what is. Or will I learn to pick my feet up and be gently carried along by the flow of what is? I mean, if there's a task, that's what it is, right? Pick those feet up. Quit dragging your feet. Regina says, she's written this in the chat, will I or we place our attention with the thoughts of not God, or with the clarity all is God? One is suffering, the other is peace. That's really the only question. This is where the stream is flowing. What will my experience, my seeming experience, be of that flow? What will my experience be? Funny, I look down and that's what's written here. Our only choice is our choice as to how we will experience what shows up. I see that, Sana. Thank you. Sana says, time's up. She didn't say that. She said I had 7 minutes left. Yeah. Again, let me just read one thing. So, doesn't recognition that there is actually no separate person remove the cause of suffering? Isn't the only practice then to root out and unbelieve those thoughts where we are identifying with the individual person? What if we were to identify with the flow instead? What if our only job were to allow everything that is appearing as part of the flow or the expression of the atonement instead? What if our job were to allow everything? From this vantage point, it's easy to see that there's nothing to gain and nowhere to go. What else is there to do but to love, accept, and allow what is? I don't know if anything got said during that time or not. I hope that it did. I'm gonna. Connie says Frank Sinatra's "I Did It My Way" is a painful way. Funny, Connie. I'm gonna turn this back over to Sana to play a song for contemplation. If you feel to contribute to Awakening Together during the song, please do so. Thanks everybody for being here. I'll turn it over to you, Sana.
You've been watching our online gathering. It happens weekly on Sundays at 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time. To join us live in the sanctuary, visit our website, awakening-together.org. You'll want to click on Online Sanctuary in the main menu, and then in the drop-down menu, look for How to Enter the Sanctuary. Right there at the top of the page is a clickable link. We'd love to see you in the sanctuary and join with you in fellowship. Thank you again for watching. Also, please know that if you'd like to stay connected via the Awakening Together channel here on YouTube, you can subscribe and hit the bell for more notifications. We hope to see you in the sanctuary.